Well, let's take our deep-ish dive into the Asteraceae, the aster family. We will use the flora that was developed by Richard Loudon, and it's on our website under a menu item called Franklin County Flora. This is what the website looks like. It's actually a separate website. And to find the taxonomic treatments, we go to taxonomic treatments, and you'll see a drop down that directs you to the dicotyledons. And then way down at the bottom, because it's such an advanced plant family, you'll see the Asteraceae. And open that on the page there, and if it doesn't open very well, just download it and read it like any other PDF. So this is what the key looks like, and it basically starts out with a description of the family that's pretty much familiar to us now, having studied the plant families. But just to review, it teaches some botany. In our area, we have only herbs. They're usually not separate sexes, the plants, so they're rarely dioecious. A lot of variation in leaf arrangement. The flowers, Loudon uses some pretty archaic terminology. Bisporangiate he uses to mean a perfect flower that has both male and female parts. Monosporangiate would be either pistillate or staminate. And he tells us that the flower position is epigynous, with an inferior ovary. And as we know, they pack together on a common receptacle. It's a slightly different use of the word receptacle than the flower part, where the petals and sepals and all are inserted. This is the top of a stem where all the flowers are inserted, but the term receptacle is used. It's a slightly different sense. Surrounded by modified leaves called phyllaries. An involucra is a radially arranged rosette of something, in this case phyllaries. The pappus, this is important because this is something that varies a lot in the Asteraceae. It takes the place of the calyx. That's what he means when he says in position of calyx. And all the different ways the pappus can be. We're used to the pappus being, basically hairs like a dandelion or thistle. But it can also be bristles, it can be awns, it can be teeth, it can be scales, it can be lacking. So pay attention to the pappus. The corolla is usually tubular, in other words, fused parts. Usually, in other words, the disc flowers are radially symmetric. That's what he means when he says regular. And they, however, can be strap-shaped, which is what ligulate is. He describes the different capitulum types that we'll see explicitly when we use the keys. He tells us that the stamens are 5, and they have the anthers, but not the filaments, sort of fused into a tube around the style. And he tells us that the fruit is an achene. A lot of nice things that we already knew about the Asteraceae, but here it is again. So here's a picture of the Asteraceae we've seen before, showing the two types of flowers in this particular radiate capitulum. A lot of flowers can be pollinated at once. The phyllaries, or involucral bracts, kind of look like sepals, but it's just a superficial similarity. They're leaves that subtend the inflorescence. Here's a picture of a dandelion in fruit, and this shows that receptacle, which in the case of the dandelion is smooth. Some Asteraceae have, subtending each flower, a sort of leathery kind of a brittle kind of a scale-like appendage that's called chaff. This is a smooth receptacle, not a chaffy one. The pappus is the modified sepals, and the phyllaries are below the inflorescence, and it's basically leaves. Here the phyllaries are very distinctly into two different rows. A nice division of types of phyllaries, useful diagnostic feature. So, this picture, which we've seen before, didn't, when we saw it before, have the chaff labeled, but this time it does. See, these flowers are subtended by this sort of papery appendage that's called chaff. Not always present, but it's useful in identification. So, using the key, moving along, we'll see that they're actually broken down into 3 separate keys, and they have to do with the 3 capitulum types. And I want to sort of draw your attention to one of the things that Loudon does, which is really not good form, is to have what are called trichotomies. Sometimes instead of just having two choices, there's three or sometimes even four. And it's something you have to be cautious of when you use this key. So, the three capitulum types, as we've learned before, radiate has both ray and disc flowers, discoid has no ray flowers, and ligulate has only ray flowers. Here's some pics. And here's some close-ups. So here's a nice example of a radiate capitulum of Silphium, which, by the way, this is an unusual one in that in this one, the ray flowers are the ones that are fertile. That is to say that they produce the fruits, the achenes, and the disc flowers are staminate. It's really kind of unusual. Often it's the disc flowers that produce the fruits and the ray flowers that are neuter just for show. Here's a picture of a thistle, which has only the radially symmetric disc flowers. They look so fluffy that it's hard to make that out, but there are no strap-shaped ones there. And oh, by the way, notice the really spiny part down there? That's the involucral bracts, the filaries. And finally, a whole tribe of the Asteraceae that consists of plants with flowers that only have these strap-shaped ones, which, when they are like that, are perfect. That is to say, bisporangiate, that is to say, having a little stamen tube, and the styles, they have both male and female parts. All the flowers are alike, and that's a big important part of the Asteraceae. Dandelions, lettuce, this here chicory. Great. So let's have an example. Let's key out an Asteraceae member using Loudon's key. So here's the one that we're going to start with, kind of a confidence builder. And of the three choices of capitulum types, of course, this is the one with a radiate capitulum. And he directs our attention to the pappus. Okay, here we go. Warning, danger. A prime, is that what that's called? There's a trichotomy. It's not just two, it's divided into three, and you have to keep your eye out for that. It's kind of frowned upon, but it's how it is. What can you do? And so the word capillary, it's a strange word. It means thin and narrow, sort of like hairs, or maybe hair-like. That's what this word means. And so is the pappus capillary? Or I don't think so. Is it a circle of awns, or a circle of bristles, or a circle of scales? No, I remember it's those two. I'm going to go back. Here. It looks like there's just two awns that make up the pappus. Okay, so I'm going back to where we were. And down here at the bottom, it says pappus none, a short, or a few scales, and that's what it is. So it's the third choice here, and that takes us to this part of the key, and it asks about the receptacle. And as we've seen, and as we are encouraged to look at right now, you've made a longitudinal section of this capitulum, and if you peel off the flowers, you'll see that mingled in them, actually subtending them, is this sort of like cardboardy, like stiff kind of little appendages. That is the chaff. So this plant has a chaffy receptacle. So looking at the leaves, there's a whole big description of a weird plant here called leaf cup, which you'll see that it doesn't match up very well. So that asks about the rays. What color are they? Purple? Nah. White? Nah. Yellow? Indeed. Let's move along. Nice picture. We've seen this a lot of times. Oh, yeah, right. Just to take a peek at that before we go along. And now, we are told that the rays are yellow, and asks about the stems. And if you look carefully at the stems, you'll see that they are not winged. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. We do have one that does have a winged stem. In fact, it's actually called wing stem. But this particular example, nope, not winged. The receptacle, that's where all those flowers are inserted. And it could be kind of a nose-like, cone-like projecting thing, like in some black-eyed Susans or so-called cone flowers, or it can be sort of like a flat disc, which it seems to be in this case. So the receptacle is not columnar, but it's flat. And we're asked to look at the phyllaries, and we want to see if there are two different types, kind of like that dandelion was, or if they're just sort of spirally arranged, but they all look more or less alike. So here's a picture that shows that they're kind of spirally arranged, more or less alike. So then we're given this choice down here, and we are asked if what the shape of them are, and whether or not the disc flowers form fruits, and they do. It turns out that what we have here is, ta-da, Helianthus Sunflower. Helianthus Sunflower. And it's conveniently the first genus in the key. And here's a little description that no doubt matches what we have. And a lot of this key is basically really pretty simple, straightforward, having to do with leaf shape and things. So as you work through the key, you'll discover that there is a group of species with like lance-shaped leaves, and a closer look will show us that the species we have here is Helianthus grossoserratus, the so-called saw-toothed sunflower. And that is how we key out Asteraceae. And there's a whole bunch of them here to key out. And what we have as to guide us in the beginning, at least, are some things that we want to take note of. So what capitulum type, what the pappus is like, scales, hairs, bristles lacking, what the phyllaries are like, small, large, parallel, one type, two types, what the receptacle is like, smooth or chaffy, if there are ray flowers, what are they like? Do they look like they can form fruit or not? And a little bit about the leaves, anything else that's distinctive, and what is the darn plant? So we'll take notes on a number of our Asteraceae until we get so good at it that we're doing it naturally. So let's key out these lovely, beautiful sunflower family members.